Hello and welcome. I'm Vin, and we're going to continue with another process video. However, this time it's going to be with something a little different. We're going to capture a kitty. So I'm going to be basing a colored pencil drawing off my friend Jamuko's cat Sumi, a very, very cute kitty. Sumi is an adorable cat and he's super fluffy. So we're going to actually use Prismacolor pencils this time. And yeah, we're going to capture the cute essence of a cute kitty. A very itty bitty kitty. And to do that, we're going to start by not taking up too much space. Actually, in retrospect, I probably should be going vertical. Probably would make a little more sense. Yeah, so Sumi is a very, very cute cat. A cat that I hope to someday actually meet in person. But yeah. And to be entirely honest with you, as much as I like cats, I'm not exactly the most adept at drawing them accurately. So this may take actually a little bit of iteration, but we're gonna do this thing. So I'm using a Strathmore Bristol paper sketchbook, so it's pretty smooth. So it works pretty good with colored pencils. Doesn't have the most green in the world, but yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So I'm actually going to run a check really quick just to make sure it's up and running. Also, it's a bit of a step back too, just to make sure I'm on the right track. I think we're good so far. Actually, what I'm going to do is that since we adjusted the orientation, I'm going to go ahead and make this vertical. Whoa. I apologize for the bit of a delay here. There we go. Yeah, we're on the track. We're on the right track here. So, what I'm actually going to do is reduce Sumi's head, because I think I drew it too big. Yeah, so Sumi likes to play with his favorite toy mouse. He's a good kid. He's a good cat, Mom. He's a cute cat. Oh, a cute cat, Mom. Oh, a good cat, Mom. Meow. So, Jamu, I apologize in advance if I mess up the proportions of your cat. I'm gonna try to make it as accurate as possible. So this is actually her photo reference. I would someday like to actually draw kitty, itty bitty kitty in person. However, I think geography makes that a little tough at the moment, so we're just gonna have to make do with the still picture. Honestly, probably easier for colored pencil anyway, being that colored pencil is all about layering and a sort of how should I put this, steadiness, just because the image requires a lot of layers, so it's not really there's a certain amount of spontaneity with colored pencil that you can do, of course, but to really properly maximize the texture thereof, you're gonna have to build some layers. So working from photos tends to be a common approach for finished colored pencil work. So you remember that part where I apologize in advance? His forehead's non-existent in this rendition right now, so... Oh boy. This may be a rather interesting process. Okay. Well, I think we're slowly getting there, but Sumi is an extremely fluffy cat. He's a good boy. He's a good kitty meow. Yes, I probably could stand to make these eyes a little more cute, just like the actual kitty. We're slowly getting there. Yeah, so again, I sort of apologize in advance just because my cat drawing is actually a little rusty, so yeah, this forehead area is a little, probably something more like that. So you can take a look-see at my prior orangutan video if you're curious about my first ever full process recording of a drawing. I have taken photos before, but I have never actually recorded the whole thing. So that was actually quite entertaining. And I honestly want to keep doing this. I want to keep recording process videos. As embarrassing as some of my line work may or may not be, but that's the idea, man. So I wonder if you can actually recognize the photo I'm using for reference. This is slightly removed from its original context. As in, it is completely removed from its original context. The original context being that Sumi completely bodied some boxes. Oh boy. Okay. So the really interesting hallmark of Sumi is his rather striking yellow eyes, which I hope to be able to encapsulate in his drawing, but we'll see. So it feels like I did not fully render the roundness of his face. It looks a little too pointed here. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay. Alright. We're gonna go ahead. So I'm actually rolling with a portion of the Prismacolor set, but here I have the the 6 cool grays, the 6 warm grays, and the 6 French grays. We may be using a little bit of the French grays to bring out some of the warmness, along with some of the cools for his face. But yeah, basically, yeah, the cool grays are, skewed towards, cooler hues, as the name implies. And then warm has a bit more, how should I put this? Oranges, well, it skews a little more towards that orange scale. And then French grays more yellowish. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting set of grays. So we're just gonna actually jump in. I'm gonna go ahead and use a little bit of cool gray 30%. This arm is probably a bit of an idiosyncratic place to start with. So if I really want to get specific with the outlines, in terms of integrating the outlines into the finished drawing, I would be using Prismacolor Verithins. Partially because the gray from the graphite sometimes does not always complement what you're doing. So what I'm probably going to do actually is go ahead and erase some of that graphite as I progress. And since it's that Bristol paper, it should come off really easily. I tried to be pretty light when I was using the mechanical pencil just now. But yeah, colored pencil tends to really accentuate these feathery edges, so I don't necessarily want to have these harsh contours here. So yeah, the sort of common way of approaching this would be to, in fact, use the proper color of outline, and then that'll just sort of blend into what you're doing. But so what I'm probably just going to do is go ahead and work on his arm. Okay, so his arm has a bit of cools and warms in it, so we're going to have to actually alternate between those two. We might be kind of working in a bit of a haphazard fashion, but if you really want to get down to it, fur is not really a linear entity, right? It's kind of like all over gets all over the place and all over your face. So there's a certain rhythm to it, but part of the fun is that it kind of just goes wherever it pleases. So and go ahead and just do a little bit on his ear too. How much time do we have? Okay. So yeah, the heart of colored pencil sort of stems in layers upon layers. And that's how you really bring out this sort of richness of the medium. And you might have seen in the previous video how I referred to burnishing. So the process of burnishing sort of means after you place some hues like this. So I know I'm kind of like winging this, but let's say you put down a little layer like this. You can burnish that with another color. So let's say I wanted to like take my cool gray 30%. I could like basically burnish it like so. So it sort of creates a really rich layer that way. So if you burnish with the colorless blender, which I seem to be missing right now for some reason. Oops. Oh, I think I know where it is. It's all good. You can also burnish with white, but if you burnish with white, it has a tendency to dull the color. When I was younger, I burnished a lot with white. That was kind of my jam, honestly. Though I probably overly burnished with white. I think I have like a whole slew of like white colored pencils just chilling around the house. Though they're not on me since I'm in a different apartment at the moment, but yeah, I had a fixation with buying a lot of white colored pencils, just for the sake of burnishing and lightning hues. Though hysterically later in life, I sort of moved on to utilizing the white of the paper, or using the pencil, the hues themselves, rather than relying on white. Or more specifically, creating interest by using pencils, as opposed to just like relying on white to like brighten things. If that makes any sense. I was really into working the surface a lot as a kid. Nowadays I try to be a little less heavy-handed. Part of that is practical too, because if you work with if you overly saturate a surface with Prismacolor pencils, you get the phenomenon known as wax bloom. And wax bloom will make it so that over time, the waxiness of the pencil will actually manifest on the surface of the page as sort of like this very cloudy layer, and that's not really good. It's not really good. I mean, you can mitigate that by using hairspray or other fixatives. Some people swear by hairspray, but of course those aerosols are not exactly the best for the environment, so you probably don't honestly want to be doing that too much. And it's bad for your health too. But some artists swear by it, and that's what we did in school back in the day. Law's a long time ago now, but it's just... Yes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually knock out this leg. Yes, so for those of you tuning in, thank you very much for watching. Certainly do appreciate your time. And yeah, I didn't have a specific timetable, so I was gonna just play it by ear. So this is a French gray. Sumi's coat has a bit of reflectivity in it. So, of course, Sumi's a dark furred cat. However, you don't want to just literally use black. There's all sorts of colors that go into this sort of thing, and if you just use the black pencil, you're not really going to maintain a lot of visual interest that way. It's just going to look very flat. You might want to use it sparingly, but nothing is really a solid color when it comes down to like animals. It's not really how it operates. Yeah, so this is going to be a really interesting process. But the wonder of colored pencils is just the sort of capacity for really layering on a surface. So like you'll see a lot of colored pencil digital brushes in say your favorite editing program, but a lot of those colored pencil digital brushes, they can sort of encapsulate the sort of grain like this, but what they're not really going to be able to encapsulate is the full range of mark making. So it's like you can sort of account for these by adjusting tilt and that sort of thing, but colored pencils are not just about the mark. They're really truly about the sort of layering process. So I can push this a little bit, and then you can't really necessarily simulate the burnishing effect. In a digital coloring context, you're going to override your colors unless you use a different blending mode. So yeah, you can really push the surface this way, and then you can do stuff like this, because Prismacolor pencils have a bit of waxiness to them, so it facilitates that sort of layering. Depending on the type of colored pencil you're using, you may have different layering capabilities, and the sort of texturality, the sort of texture will also differ from brand to brand as well. So right now we're working on Sumi. Okay. So we can spoil ourselves a little bit. We can pivot. Okay. So I didn't come totally prepared. Let's see here. So the eye can be a little tricky. We want to make sure we really maintain the highlight. Because if we don't, we risk the eye looking a little flat. Sumi's nose is a little more on the coolest hue side. So we're actually going to go ahead and work on that a little bit. So one thing we're risking right now is that it looks a little mottled, so to speak. We really want to make sure the fur is readily visible. We don't really want this semi-mottled appearance. This is still just a first layer, but we don't want to kind of leave it like this. We really want to bring things out. Yeah, so it's a little tricky, but a little bit of canary yellow as well. Canary yellow's actually got some green in it. So I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen it really quick. Actually, it might be a little darker than canary. I think sunburst yellow, I think. Let's see. That's my Spanish orange. There's my sunburst. There's sunburst yellow. Yeah, because I want to just really just work on the outlines really quick here. Yeah, so colored pencils, even to this day, are still my favorite art medium. It's just the caveat is that in today's sort of fast-paced world, and I guess one could say production environments or whatever, it's a little harder to be able to complete colored pencil drawings on a regular basis, just because it takes it takes a bit of time. So we're like at the 30-minute mark, right? And it's not fully there. I mean, we have the infrastructure, we have the sort of groundwork, but if we really want to bring out, Sumi's textures, it's gonna take quite a few more strokes, but and we're on our way, certainly. It's just saying. Yeah. There's certain things about Prismacolor that you'll just never be able to really approximate with even other colored pencil brands. So I'm a huge fan of brands such as Derwent and Lyra, but they have a different sort of dryness to them, to put it colloquially. So. And they all have their own strengths, honestly, but there's a certain sort of, one could say, guilty pleasure to the way Prismacolor's layer. They get kind of luscious, as it were. So what I'm going to do right now is step back and take a look at it, and we'll keep going shortly. Alright, so we're back. So yeah, we're working on Sumi, the cute kitten. And yeah, so we're gonna just keep on keeping on. There's a lot more layering to be done, so let's just go for it. I feel like I sort of didn't properly encapsulate the roundness of his face, so I'm actually going to adjust this line right here. And I'm also going to just go ahead and actually get a little reckless and just go ahead and work on his ears a bit. So, So actually, this might be one of those cases where we might actually want to use the black pencil. I'll go ahead and sharpen it with them. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and actually block this in. Taking care to maintain the highlight, that's kind of really important. So you might have noticed I was using an electric sharpener from X-Acto. So yeah, due to the sheer waxiness of Prismacolor colored pencils, sometimes not every mechanical sharpener is going to jive that well over time. Sometimes they get kind of jammed up if you use a lot of colored pencils in them. This is a heavier duty one, so it can take a bit of all that, but yeah, I mean, like, I've definitely gotten to the point where even some of the dedicated Prismacolor pencil sharpeners kind of can wear out after a while. And every so often I'll use X-Acto knives and just do it by hand, but sometimes it's just easier to go ahead and just do it mechanical. Though in some regards that is a little bit of a shortcut. Yeah, so this is in fact that dark pencil. I'm trying to not use it too much. I want to use it super sparingly just as a point of emphasis, because basically once you start like going too much with the black pencil, you're not really going to be able to go back. So just for the sake of maintaining textures, you don't really want to use just black. You want to sort of use other colors to get there, but I'm just using it to sort of push the shapes more. So we want to take specific care to not color in the entirety of the forehead. We want to make sure there's a bit of a highlight there, so we're going to intentionally leave a good chunk of it white. Once we fill in the head too much, we're not going to be able to go back. So Sumi's ears actually are pretty much completely dark on the outside of his ears. Okay. So yeah, we're slowly but surely, on our way to capturing this cat. I think the little chartreuses will do. Chartreuse is beat up. Yep. Alright, so I'll just do a little bit of chartreuse underneath his eye. And sort of in the center as well. Taking care to keep that highlight present. Yeah, we're slowly but surely getting there. It can take a little while sometimes. Yeah, so once again, we're sort of going to erase some of those original outlines and just going to replace them with Prismacolor marks. Partially because, due to the kind of outer fur, the nature of its fur, we don't really necessarily want to have those sharp lines there. So I think we're getting to the point where now we can actually start burnishing a little more. So Sumi's face is interesting, right? If you look at this reference, his face has a lot of cools in it, but his body is a lot of warms. So, as the adage goes, cool light results in warm shadows, and warm light results in cool shadows. So, even though the original source lighting appears to be fluorescent, I mean, we can sort of just use the cool hues on his head and then all the warms on his body, so to speak. So this is cool 20%. Yeah, so again, the sort of crux of colored pencils is their capacity for layering. But you're going to have to really be patient with the medium because you don't have the same coverage potential as paint or marker. I mean, if you turn this on its side, the most you can only do is this, right? So, so far as mark making is concerned, you can't cover quite as much area with colored pencil. Though in my sort of youth, I was sort of known for making colored pencil drawings that were more than a few feet. Or, I'm sorry, that were about a few feet tall. And that is possibly part of the reason why my arm cramps. I'm just kidding. But, no, seriously though, it's fun making large scale drawings with colored pencil. However, the sort of heart of the medium stems with playing around with textures and layers and stuff like that, and that's a little harder when you work at a grander scale. So there actually is a little bit of pink in his fur, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. Yeah, so he sort of, his body kind of goes like this. So we're going to go ahead and fill that in. Yeah, so the sort of tricky part of colored pencils is that you have to expect that it's not really going to look like much for a while. It's just part of the medium. It's just part of if you're working with watercolor, you're wetting the page. And then you're going to fill things in. You get this sort of instant I don't want to say instant gratification from it necessarily, but you sort of get instant feedback, whereas there is a certain sort of instantness to colored pencils, but as you can see, to actually cover a lot of area, we're just going to have to keep making marks. You don't have, in other mediums, you don't necessarily make quite as many marks for the sake of coverage. So with paint, with like acrylic, you just, if you were so inclined, you could cover an area just pretty much instantly, right? Just load your brush and go for it. That's not to say it would be the best approach, but if you're working with oils, you can like pretty much go completely dark at the beginning, and then bring out the light parts of your subject matter, right? Just with just with paint on top. But with colored pencil, you're sort of working in stages from light to, not necessarily always light to dark. If you're using different paper, you could have like a gray sheet and work with and use white or lighter colors on top. That's actually a really striking way of doing this. And I was contemplating doing this for Sumi, but I opted to do it this way, just for the demonstration purposes, and also just playing around with layering, just to really try to see if I can build things up to get to where I want them to be. But yeah, so let's take a look. Yeah, so again, his body kind of curves like this. Yeah, so one thing we don't want is to just look like a giant blob, so we really want to go ahead and bring things out. Yeah, so one nice part about this paper, this Bristol's paper, is that the marks pretty much glide. I mean, you don't sort of get the texture as you apply strokes as much, so you're not really reacting to the surface, to the tooth of the paper as much, but you do have a pretty nice experience just applying strokes to the sheet, so that's pretty satisfying. So, but we do ultimately want to go a little darker, so I'm going to go with warm gray 90%. And I'm just going to darken this. And then we can actually burnish it with multiple colors. So the burnishing process isn't really something you can encapsulate in a digital context quite as well, because what you would ordinarily do, if you work in the same layer anyway, you're just gonna override your previous color, unless you really figure out some blending modes. But here it's a really organic process, and that sort of organicness and just sort of reacting to the way colors work, it's a pretty satisfying process that is that is incredibly entertaining. And quite honestly, thrilling. So I mean, you can approximate this sort of thing, just blend modes, but you're not necessarily going to be able to have the same sort of build-up experience. Of course, just the caveat is that colored pencil is just it's a rather labor-intensive medium. So, I mean, we've got the surface, and that we've been spending almost, 40-ish minutes on now. And still ultimately building things up. So I mean, you could, if I were so inclined, I could have just pretty much straight up, filled the whole page with marks really quick. But that's not necessarily the best way to achieve a really interesting result. I could have just filled in the entire area really quick, but by doing the sort of individual strokes before, I sort of have a ground for further mark making. And also, you can kind of notice a bit of different texture here between sort of the center of his body and the rest of his body over here. I'm going to go ahead and step back a little bit just to make sure I'm on the right track. Okay. Yeah, so... Yeah, so if I want to zoom in really quick, yeah, this is what we were working on. Got a little bit of a face. Yeah. Oh, pardon me. Yeah. So ultimately, his face could probably be a little rounder. Yeah, so that sort of stems from the slight ambiguity of my original sketch. Also, I made a little mistake. It's supposed to go up here. So, the long story short is that colored pencil is perfectly viable for all sorts of, production and illustration work still, but to really get the result that you want, just be prepared to spend some time. So, none of this ever comes instantly. And if I just took my pencil and just did this sort of action or something, it's not necessarily going to result in a very full appearance. That fullness stems from, just layers upon more burnishing upon more layers and that sort of, things. Sumi definitely has a lot of splotches around his face, so we're gonna try to encapsulate some of the details around his face. I'm sure the actual Sumi right now is completely tuckered out or on the hunt for his beloved mouse. So that's where some of the roundness was lost. I didn't really properly convey this part outside his face here. Yeah, so that should look a little more full now. I probably want to sharpen this a little more too. Yeah, so I hope this has been good for everybody. So once again, this is Sumi the cat, Jamuko's beloved cat, recently adopted, and if you want to see more fun pictures of Sumi, you can check out her Twitter at Jamuko. There's plenty of fun cat pictures, and of course other pictures as well, but that's not to say there are only cat pictures on her Twitter feed. So yeah, his nose structures got a little muddled in my drawing, but so what I probably want to do actually is bring that back. One way to do that is via a little bit of other action. So instead of just going primarily using the cool grays as I've been doing, I'm going to go ahead and use a sky blue light. And a little bit of trivia is that sky blue light is one of the newer pencils in the Prismacolor line. It was added in the 2005 set of new colors. Which is 2005 added 12, and then 2006 added 12 more. I think it was part of the original one. I'm almost positive. Well, anyway. And then those colors were integrated into the 132 set, which is now obsolete because now there is a 150 set. That 150 set has colors from the distant past of Prismacolor, so some Deco pinks, because those Deco colors were phased out. And they're basically super bright colors, so like pastel hues essentially. And then it also integrates some of the colors from the retired Prismacolor Lightfast line, so which are really nice. Yeah, so it's I was originally contemplating just using the grays, but as I said at the beginning of the video though, not everything is necessarily just pure black. So even with what seems to be pretty much just black fur, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. So we're gonna apply sky blue light, and You can sort of notice even with the sky blue light, it's bringing out the fur a little more. It looks not as monochrome, because even though you have your three different types of gray: French, cool, warm and cool. Um, you can really kind of push the direction of the piece just by using other colors as well. Of course, I don't want to get too crazy. I'm not going to turn Sumi into a Technicolor cat or anything, but so if you do that, you can really supplement the sort of appearance of the cat. If I were so inclined, what I could also do is use some purple. I will probably not get too over the top, but let's go ahead and do some Mediterranean blue. So, yeah, so in the reference picture, you can see a good amount of blue in his rear. And he has a lot of colors, actually. It's going to be a little tricky to encapsulate them all. But yes, his head was somewhat cooler, if you will, than his body. Alright, so we're going to take a bit of a breather, and then we'll keep on. So I'll be right back. Alright, so we're going to keep on going with some more Sumi the cat. The very, very wonderful cat. So, you notice this whole area is a little ambiguous. This has a bit more directionality to it. But, I mean, Sumi's fur is kind of going in a lot of directions, so to truly sort of capture all the fur is going to take a little bit of maneuvering. But also, since his fur is pretty dark, we're going to have to layer a lot of pencils and pencil strokes to actually sort of get to that point. If we were so inclined, we could, go a little hard-handed, just fill in his fur right away, but we actually can go ahead and do that for certain areas like this. There are more shadow anyway. But fur is not flat, right? So, to properly convey all that, you're going to have to do something. Do some additional strokes to sort of like create depth. Yes, Sumi's not really this splotchy on his face. Over time, we're going to want to fill this in a little bit, but his fur is super richly textured. So this is exciting. I've never recorded a colored pencil drawing in my life. I've been using colored pencils for pretty much over 2 decades now. Though of course along the way I've experimented with other media as well. But yeah, as a super young kid, I messed around with colored pencils, sort of did some game fan art with them. But in the contemporary era, I've been using colored pencils to capture botanical for the sake of, I've been using colored pencils for the sake of botanical drawing a lot of the time recently. So this is one of those cases where I kind of am in a bit of pickle, so I'm actually going to somewhat cheat, as it were, and then go ahead and just use the white. So this is actually technically burnishing, but yeah, this is, you can notice how I'm pushing sort of pencils like that. So yeah, there are other ways of actually doing this, but let's see. Yeah, so it's kind of a little messy, honestly, but it sort of gets the point across. If I were a little more deliberate about his whiskers, I probably would have tried to color around it, but it's honestly fine. It takes a little bit of finicky positioning, and honestly, all we really want to do is sort of convey the idea of these whiskers. We don't necessarily have to get completely precise. So once again, I'm using the black colored pencil sparingly, because we really want to use the other pencils to do the job, because black will create a sort of absoluteness to it, and so it's not going to create visual interest, because Sumi's fur is not straight up black. It's all sorts of colors. There's blues, there's browns in there, got a little bit of even pink in his on the underside of his ears, so yeah, it's not a one-dimensional thing. It's definitely a good cat. How are we doing here? Actually, I'm going to go ahead and remove the camera from the tripod. I'm going to go ahead and get a little closer. So, yeah, this is Sumi, the cat. Yeah, so we're gonna darken some patches on his head, and we're going to go ahead and not fill in the entirety of his body, but we're going to create a little bit of visual interest. So yeah, we're gonna keep on keeping on. I'm gonna pop this back on the tripod. Okay. Yeah, so what we're going to do is actually, I'm going to go ahead and get a little more reckless. Let's look at this too. So is that there's actually a bit of rigidness in the way I portrayed his arm. So what I'm probably going to do is flush that out a little bit. Because I made it really like a straight line, and which is not the case. So what I'm going to do is actually push the form a little more. Yeah, so there's a whole slew of things we could do to diversify the sort of hues on his fur. However, I think we're gonna go ahead and just kind of play it by ear. So we haven't really been using the lighter warm grays. This is a warm gray, 20, right? 20%. And so what we're going to do is just do a very light burnishing, just to fill in some of the areas on his fur here. Yes, I'm not necessarily doing the most accurate portrayal of his fur, because a more accurate portrayal would be to sort of encapsulate the splotches. However, this particular area right here is actually rather it's rather solid. So we're gonna try to just encapsulate that solidness, and then just kind of like portray patches elsewhere. So one area I really could stand to improve is his ears. You don't really see a whole lot of detail here. Yeah, so we're now at the 1 hour and 15-minute mark. So we'll try to push for a little longer, just so that we can really fill out his fur. Also, this is one of the phenomena that can get a little risky if you recklessly use the side of the pencil like I was doing. The wood can actually scratch the paper. So you notice there's a little bit of incision's probably not the technical term, but you sort of imprint upon the paper if you don't exercise caution. I mean, it's not really that noticeable, but it's there. Yeah, so his face is a little splotchy right now. So what we probably want to do is take another color and just start burnishing parts of it out. Yeah, so again, not to be entirely personally biased or nothing, but the colored pencil brush in a lot of kits does not necessarily encapsulate the full breadth of the medium. Not that it's necessarily intended to, but there's a lot with colored pencil that you don't necessarily get to experience when you're digitally painting. However, of course, the counter to that, right, is that it's been 75 minutes at doing layer upon layer, and to be entirely frank, there are many more layers that we could do. But if you were to do this digitally, you probably honestly would be able to fill space much quicker, but you wouldn't achieve the same result. So it's kind of just a matter of what your personal intent lies. So in this case, I just love the meditative process of adding layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, upon stroke, and then, stepping back and adding more strokes, but let's pause it darker. Okay. Yeah, so this area is getting filled in. I kind of honestly filled it in a slightly haphazard fashion. It's okay. Of course, sometimes when it comes on the fur, you just want to apply marks in such a way so as to suggest the directionality of the fur. You're not really going to be literally doing a pencil stroke for every single strand of fur, right? That's just going to take you forever, so you're going to have to just do things that will suggest it. But even so, like, you can kind of notice there's a certain sort of universality to why I did this area. So, to sort of break it up a bit, you're just gonna have to go back in. Yeah. So yeah, we really were intending to capture the depth of Sumi's fur. There's a lot to it. So this is indigo blue. I don't necessarily want to get too colorful with it, but I just want to have a small layer of it. It also actually helps when you do eyes to add a little bit of a shadow as well. Because that shadow will prevent the eye from looking flat. Yes. So what I can do is what I can do from that point onwards is just a little bit of layering on top. Let's check time. Okay. I'm gonna push this to an hour and 15, or I'm sorry, the hour and 30-minute mark. Go 90 minutes worth. But yeah, there's a lot that you can really do with fur. So we get the idea. If you are so inclined, you could really get into like the finer details of colored pencil art for just on hours upon hours upon hours. We're gonna go ahead and fill in this part. So just go ahead and actually I'm gonna use 30%. So one thing I should probably be cognizant about is just filling in the body using the same hair direction. I'm sorry, fur direction. So it definitely took a bit of time, but yeah, we have a cat, and of course there's certain details that could be pushed, but for the sake of the sort of drawing, I mean, I think we've sort of encapsulated the grand sort of character of Sumi's fur. Though yeah, of course there's little tweaks that we could make. But for the sake of this particular drawing, I think we can call it in a few minutes. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And many thanks to Jamuko for the opportunity to actually do this. Hopefully I'm not disappointing. Hopefully I can have lived up to cat expectations. And yeah, it's certainly a lot of fun. I would definitely love to try another Sumi drawing at some point. Alright, so we're on the home stretch. So we're going to go ahead and do a little more work on this part of his body and go ahead and sign off. Yeah, so these are Prismacolor colored pencils. we've primarily worked with the cool gray, warm gray, and French gray parts of the set. We've used some supplementary colors. We did a teeny tiny bit of lemon yellow and sunburst yellow on his, as well as chartreuse on his eyes. We've done a teeny tiny bit of supplementary pinks on his ears. Notably, we're using nectar on his ears. Actually, I think we were using a different hue. I think it was, I think it was rosy beige, if I'm not mistaken, actually. That was a little more pink than that. Pink rose. You can actually use the pink rose to burnish it as well, if you were so inclined. Yeah, once again, burnishing is the process of using a sort of a pencil on top of another layer to sort of make that layer look more full, or just sort of like smooth out the layer, so to speak. So you can burnish with all colors. The colorless blender that Prismacolor sells basically will burnish without adding extra color, so to speak. And to reiterate, as a kid, I burnished a lot with white, since that was sort of the way I wanted to accentuate colors, just by making them a little more bright. But I sort of don't burnish as much with white nowadays in favor of using other color combinations. I'll still burnish with white every so often, though. Yeah. Nowadays, not quite so much. And then, so we also used a teeny tiny bit of other colors as well. So we did this slate gray on his body a little bit. Yeah. A teeny tiny bit of indigo blues over here as well. And a teeny tiny bit of Mediterranean blue as well. So, and if you're so inclined, you can go back in and re-burnish with that. Re-burnish it. Actually, since we're mentioning the colorless blender, let's go ahead and actually get it. That should be around here. Okay. Total confession, I might have misplaced it. It is conceivable I don't have a colorless blender on me after all. Even though I could have sworn I did. So I apologize for that. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think I have one here. I don't seem to have it around here. Oh well, that's fine. So we're talking about the 150 set. I bought some of those individuals, so notably these fine colors are part of the original Prismacolor Light Fast set, which is now discontinued. But with them came such colors as cerulean blue. This is amazing coverage, as well as Dago Pink. I'm sorry, Dago Peach. And Gray Green Light. And so yeah, it was pretty fantastic. Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, I'll just contemplate. I'm trying to remember where I put that color. No, that's fine. And go ahead and apply some of that Dago Peach. Dago Peach. Yeah, so I kind of broke past that hour and a half benchmark after all. Yeah. There's definitely sort of richness you can achieve with colored pencil layering. It's a rewarding, though time-consuming process. So it's just like you're not really going to necessarily achieve these sort of layering effects with other mediums. And that's not to say they're even necessarily, quote unquote superior, if that's even quantifiable. But yeah, it's just it's a fun medium. It can certainly take a while to get places. I mean, if you want to fast forward to if you want to rewind back to 20 minutes into the video. I mean, Sumi here is not going to look like he has a whole lot of coverage, right? But yeah, so I think we're almost about ready. The original intent is to leave parts of his head lighter, just for the sake of not over convoluting the drawing. So I kind of went a little wild over here, honestly. So in the future, I would probably want to maintain a bit more directionality with this fur.